Hello and greetings to you all. My name is Anthony Altman, and this is the first video of a new series that I wish to produce that is specifically for inspiration and motivation. So this video is inspiration number one. And I'm recording this on the 15th of December, 2023. And I think you can agree with me that at this particular time, after the COVID pandemic, that some people call it, other people have different names for it, a great deal more information is emerging as a consequence of a great deal more scientific research. And there are now emerging an increasing number of scientists, doctors, who are, and even leaders, country leaders, health ministers, that are beginning to change their attitude and their perception on what we experienced from the end of 2019 to the beginning of 2023, all throughout the world. There are many people on YouTube, Rumble, specifically Rumble, because unfortunately, this information is not readily acceptable or appreciated by the majority of people. And these people are telling us, as a consequence of their conviction and their desire to provide what they regard as truth, and their appreciation of freedom of speech, so that they can provide an alternative point of view, which really is the basis of science going back some time. You discover something, you create something, it's discussed, it's argued, the pros, the cons, the fors and against, and everything in between. And usually then consensus is reached in some manner, and that particular achievement is ratified. Whenever there is the loss of freedom of speech, the loss of ability to discuss anything, then the viewpoint becomes narrow and becomes the viewpoint of whoever is able to have the loudest voice. And this is where we've been now for quite a long time, hundreds of years perhaps, even maybe longer. And then there are people like me. We are different. We think differently. And my platform is truth, knowledge, information, inspiration, and motivation. And the inspiration and motivation is towards helping people realize that a good 99.9% of all human beings on this planet are operating subpar, which means that they're not operating at full potential. And this is borne out by science. We are told that we use 4% of our DNA, which means that 96% of our DNA is not used. The scientists call it junk DNA because they don't know what it's used for or how to switch it on, connect it, activate it, actualize it. We see maybe 5% of the light spectrum. Some people feel it's a lot less. I have even been given the information that we see 0.0005% of the light spectrum. Whatever it may be, it's under 5%, which means that we see an extraordinarily narrow band of light frequency, which means that whatever you're seeing in the world today, you're missing out on 95% or 96 or 97% of what's really there. In other words, we're virtually blind. We don't hear the full sound spectrum. And we are told that we use perhaps 5% of our mental potential. And very few people know exactly how the mind operates. And there's no percentage available. How many people are using what level or what degree of their minds, because we don't know. Now, we can continue living in ignorance and continue living the way we are now, in a state of chaos, emergency, suffering, constant war, and whatever else is coming down the pike at the moment, which does not look very pleasant, pretty, or inspiring. And my point of view is that knowledge is always preferable to ignorance. And if you don't really know who you are, i.e., you're using too little of your mental potential, too little of your mind, not seeing enough, and also with all the psychological influences, learned beliefs, learned patterns of behavior, learned programming that we have been subjected to from the moment we were born, we have a distorted perception of who we really are, because most of us don't know who we are. Most people think we are just the body. And there's much, much more to us than that. And so my job, I feel, is to present a different perspective. And that perspective has got everything to do with developing our vast human potential. Each one of us has a huge potential lying dormant. And this human potential is irrevocably connected to consciousness. And in the series that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about how we are able to self-actualize, in those inimitable words of Abraham Maslow, a famous American psychologist, to actualize more of our abilities. And this can only come about when we actively participate in whatever it is that we can do. And there are so many different techniques, modalities, practices that can help us develop more of our human potential and consciousness. I have a lot to say on this, but let me end by saying this to you, my dear brothers and sisters. We as human beings have the potential of being 100%. And in reality, we are operating at a fraction, a very small fraction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% perhaps. It is our divine right and our divine purpose, our destiny, to develop more of that potential. In order to do that, you are to choose to do that. If you go into your motor car and you sit there and you say, well, where shall I go? And you do not make a choice. You will sit there until you make a choice. And then when you make a choice, start the engine and go to that destination of your choice. It's the same thing. A silly analogy, but it means the same. We have the potential to go far in our evolutionary process. And that evolutionary process can take us to what I call super spiritual galactic human beings. And yet we seem to choose to be extremely limited. In order to be that potentialized human being, we are to develop our consciousness. And I will explain more and say more in subsequent series, subsequent episodes of this series. Please follow. I join you to participate and to listen and to share this video and all the other videos in the series that I plan on making. And for more information, please visit my website, anthonyaltman.net. That's ANTHONY ALTMAN, anthonyaltman.net. And there you will find much more information. Thank you. See you on the road.